Over kwane the phrase, life goes on is definitely right. No matter what you are facing, life goes on. The problem, however, is that life doesn't always go well or the way you'd like it to. And life doesn't tell you what to do next. From the moment he noticed Claire's minivan, parked next to Martina Nutrepco's Mercedes in the backyard of the courtyard by the Marriott Hotel in Lyon, he had two choices. 1. Kick her cheating husband out of my house and get a divorce. 2. Find a way to forgive what she did and work on rebuilding the marriage. Of course, at the time, he was still not thinking straight enough to realize that those were really the only two options. All he had on my mind was rage and resentment, which quickly led to me deciding to get revenge, or partial revenge, by giving her hell. He did so, and he don't regret one bit. Of course, he had a certain satisfaction in seeing her suffer as she spent more than a week feeling anxious and afraid, wondering if he knew about her affair. And he had the satisfaction of knocking Nutrepco down and peeing on him, at least for a few minutes. But none of those things made it all better. And now, 8+ weeks later, it was clear that there was nothing that could make it all better. All that was left was a choice between two unappealing alternatives. For 2 months, he was busy at work, spending time with work friends, doing some home repair, and trying not to dwell on how empty my home and life were without Claire. I've always cooked a lot and done a lot of marketing, so it wasn't hard to feed myself, and learning how to do laundry wasn't that hard either. He hoped that time would help me figure out what he wanted. But the problem was that my longing for Claire and my rage at her were so closely intertwined that he couldn't separate them, and he couldn't tell which was stronger, which voice to listen to. He spoke to her a little as possible, a few short phone calls. After 6 weeks, she begged me to give her a chance to explain, and he let her come and tell me the whole damn story, no pun intended. After listening to her, he had some of my questions answered. He now knew how the affair had started, and what Denny and Amy's role were. But it didn't get me one bit closer to a solution. He did get some useful information, too. Claire still loved me and didn't like Nutrepco one bit. She was desperate to stay with me, and incredibly sorry for what she'd done, and he had to admit that the counseling session seemed to have helped her take full responsibility for the seriousness of her action. She realized that this wasn't nothing. On the other side, there is always on the other side. Claire knew exactly how he felt about swinging, because we had already discussed it, but she still went to the party and slept with 3 guys there, and then let one of them talk her into having an affair because if you believe her, she liked the sex they were having at the party. How the hell could she expect me to live with that? After 20 ans of marriage, I'm no longer good enough for her, and even worse. Try not enough to satisfy her, and she sign up for a full meal? He don't suffer from a lack of self-confidence, but there is no man who can easily accept such a thing without thinking about his ability to love. He always thought Claire and he were pretty good in bed. Sure, he always tried to please her and even play game when she wanted me to. But there's nothing like finding out you've been replaced, even if only partially to make you question whether you were doing a good job. Life went on. After her meeting and her confession, Claire's periodic phone calls died down. She was probably terrified of what he would tell her, and decided it was best to just give me as much time I needed. The first day after he kicked her out, he changed the message on my answering machine to say that Claire no longer lived here and to include her parents' phone number. Not surprisingly, he had to deal with several shocked and concerned messages from her friends who were cautiously curious or just outright asking what was going on. To those he cared about, he called back and told the truth. Claire was having an affair. He found out about it and kicked her out. He didn't share the details, but he was determined to make sure people didn't hear some confused version of the story elsewhere and think it was all my fault. 2 or 3 couples we had known for years turned out to be amazing friends. They invited me over for dinner, called me regularly, and simply offered their support without in any way trying to siphon information out of me or get into my marriage. He imagined that there were probably other people doing the same for Claire, but he didn't particularly care. Talking to my kids about the situation was one of the hardest things for me to do. The first week he called both Emily and Frank. He had planned to say only that my mom and he were going through a difficult time and that she was staying with her parents for the time being. But he underestimated my children's insight and determination. Within a week, one and the other called me every night full of concern and question. No do they were talking to Claire well, and not surprisingly, they figure it out. Dad, there's no way mom would have left on her own. Emily told me one night on the phone. If she was mad at you, she would have made you leave, and you wouldn't have kicked her out over nothing. I can't believe I'm asking this, but did she cheat on you or something? After a long silence, he replied, yes, she cheated. But he won't say anything more about it. She's your mother, and she love you and Frank a much I do. No matter what happen, you will always have two parents who care about you more than anything else in the world. Emily said slowly, I really can't believe it, Daddy, but I know you. You wouldn't have done this if you weren't sure. What are you going to do now? I have no idea, honey, give it time, talk to your mom and see what happens. I'm just sorry you and Frank have to deal with this. You have enough to deal with okay, school stuff, and just being a student. We talked some more, and he was so thankful for my poised attentive doctor, and he was also thankful that she and Frank were out of the house. If they were still at home, things would have been so much worse. A Pâques week approached, we faced a new problem. For over 15 ans, our family tradition has been to a visitor dinner at Claire's parents' house, with the entire extended family, and even since the kids left for Middlebury, they have always come home for spring break and joined us this year there was no way he could participate. He called Claire and suggested we have a casual dinner in the afternoon, without me, and meet Emily and Frank in the evening. After trying in vain to convince me to come to dinner, she finally agreed. He picked up the twins at the airport Friday night. They were going to stay at the house as usual and visit Claire during the week. It was so great to see my two hockey stars, so full of energy and good cheer. He got a little emotional remembering how many years Claire and he spent raising them, and he had to wipe tears from my eyes after her hug. On Easter Sunday, he spent the day alone in the house, eating a quick sandwich and doing a bit of work in the garden. He declined all invitations from friends, preferring to be alone. To my surprise, Emily showed up around 3 in the afternoon. She had left Easter dinner early to be alone with me. We got in the car and drove to a nearby park where we both liked to walk, enjoying the pass around the large picturesque lake. Emily wasted no time, and what she said came as no surprise to me. Dad, you and Mom are both so miserable. Isn't there some way you can forgive her and try to work things out? He only smiled sadly at her, not knowing what to answer, and she continued. I mean, it would be different if you had a bad marriage, if you were constantly yelling at each other like Mona's parents, or if she cheated before, but this is the first and only time, right? Emily, he said, you know he can't talk about this with you. I know you love me and Mom, and I know you want to help, but there's no way he can discuss the details of our problem with you. It's just not fair to you and Frank. She didn't give up so easily. Mom told me that it was all her fault, that she was opinionated and selfish and disrespected you, and that she told you the whole story and begged you to forgive her. Can't you see she's being serious? She even went to a psychologist. I know she want to, I'm just not sure it's enough. There are some things you can forgive someone for, and there are some things that are so devastating that apologizing can't fix them. She stopped me with a hand on my arm, and we stood facing each other on the quay path next to the lake. Okay then, think of it this way. You're obviously unhappy, Dad. You're lonely, angry, and have too much free time on your hands, so what can you do to make things better? What will make you happy again? Get a divorce and start over at your advanced stage. She poked me playfully with her finger and we both grinned, or have a mom at home again who will love you and do her best to make it up to you. You always knew he raised a smart doctor, he said. You posed the question the same way he posed it to myself. What will make me happy? The problem is I don't have an answer. Being alone, going out on that again, trying to find someone to share my life with, someone who could mean a much to me as your mom does, is pretty unappealing. On the other hand, having her around and knowing every time I look at her that, way, I can't talk about this with you. I closed my eyes for a moment trying to regain my composure. Honey, I just can't discuss this with you anymore. You're already more involved in all of this than I'd like, and I can't talk to you about my relationship with your mother anymore. You're just going to have to trust me to do what is best once I realize that. I smiled at her again, a little regretfully, and she hugged me tightly. Okay, Dad. Thanks for listening anyway. I love you. I know you do, sweetie. It was about a month later when Claire's sister Diane came to visit me. I hadn't seen her or any of Claire's relatives since the day I kicked her out of the house. I assumed that both Diane and her father offered to talk to me, but Claire stopped them. If that was the case, then Claire did the right thing. I would have been even more angry at having to justify myself to her father or sister for my action, but it had been over 3 months. I didn't feel so angry anymore. More just tired and sad. I missed Claire, but I didn't want her back. More than that, I didn't want to see her or talk to her. I didn't know if I could at all. To my surprise, Diane and I had a wonderful time. She showed up Saturday morning around 10, just I started making a big ham and cheese omelette. I added a couple more eggs, and we split it for 2. I had always liked Diane. She had the same energy and humor as her older sister, and almost the same look. She was slim, busty Icelandic, and loved to flirt. Diane never married, but she always had a boyfriend, usually desperately in love with her, and willing to do anything for her. Diane, on the other hand, had never had a serious relationship with any of them. I knew why she came to me, and she knew I knew, but that didn't stop us from having fun. We chatted about this and that, her job, her latest boyfriend, my kids, all over breakfast, and a couple cup of coffee. Finally, he said, "Why don't we take our cup out on the deck, Diane? I'm sure you have something to say, and you can say it there." As we settled into our chair, she looked at me seriously, busty with a twinkle in her eye and said, "Danny, you know me too well for me to try to snow you. I thought he was just going to tell you what a fool you were for not taking Claire back. He was going to point out how lonely you are, how sad and tired you look, how much you need her, all that nonsense. But the thing is, we both know who was the fool. It was Claire." She shook her head. "I still can't believe she was an idiot. My own sister, the one person in the world I always turned to for advice." Diane sank into her thoughts for a moment, and he just waited, watching her. He was struck by how beautiful she was, and he could easily see her boyfriend's circling around her pinky finger. After a minute or two, her thoughts seemed to return to our conversation. "So you'll cut the crap, okay? Claire is miserable. She's devastated. She knows she screwed up big time, and she's done absolutely everything she can think of to make things right with you again. She's working with a counselor. She moved out of her mom and dad's house and into an apartment, even to get almost killed her. She said it was like making the breakup permanent. She came to you and told you the whole story and apologized fully as she knows how to do. And she gave you time and space, didn't she? She didn't pressure you. She didn't inundate you with phone calls and love notes. She knows you're hurting, knows it's her fault, and she's trying to make sure you deal with it at your own pace." Diane looked directly at me. "Danny, what else can she do? I don't think there's anything else she can do. That is not the problem. The problem is, she destroyed our marriage so badly that it can't be fixed." We sat for a minute. Diane didn't have an answer to that question. "I know it's up to me now." He finally continued, "And I know everyone is waiting for me to make a decision. I'm not dragging this out, believe me. I'm trying to figure out what you want, which of Toulouse alternative, neither of which, by the way, deserve to be in front of her. He stopped and stared at her, and she nodded her head a little sadly. Sorry, I didn't mean to take offense at you, but the alternative both suck, trying to build a new life without her, or swallowing what she did to me and trying to find a way to love and trust her again. And I don't seem to be at the point where one of those alternatives seem even slightly preferable to the other. We sat for a while longer. The fun in our conversation was almost gone, took some part of me still enjoyed just sitting and watching Diane. Like her sister, she was just a babe. He realized with a shock that for the first time in over 3 months, he was having particularly sexual thoughts. Cuckolding had completely turned off my own sexuality in a way he had never imagined. When she got up to leave, he surprised himself by becoming a little flirtatious, going back to the way Diane and he had teased each other over the years. Thanks for coming over, Diane. It's always a pleasure to see you. I'm only disappointed you didn't offer to conform in my loneliness. Just think how much better you could have comforted me. She smirked back and flicked her hair exaggeratedly lightly, playing the seductress. Don't think I'm not tempted, Danny. But you still belong to Claire, at least until you tell us all that you don't. And I don't think she'll be thrilled at the idea of me easing your loneliness. She's just hoping to get a chance to do it herself. That night he spent a couple hours at a local bar with Mike and Tommy, 2 friends from work. Since he'd broken up with Claire, we'd gone out 5 or 6 fois together, just to have a beer and watch a game on TV or play darts. Tonight something was different, and it took me a few minutes to realize what it was. I leaned my back against the wall of our booth, watching the women on the small dance floor, and then it hit me. The last few times he'd been at the bar, he hadn't even noticed the women. It hadn't even occurred to me to look at them. Today he was looking at them, noticing which one was wearing a low-cut top and looking great in it. Which one was flirting with her boyfriend, even which one was sitting at the bar looking like she was waiting for someone to hit on her. Without thinking about whether it was a good idea, he stood up and walked over to the red-haired woman sitting in front of a nearly empty martini glass. He sat down on the stool to her left and said, I think this one is almost empty. Would you let me buy you a refill? She turned and looked at me, smiling slightly. He wouldn't mind another one. But what is that round gold thing on your finger? He looked. He liked her already. I think they call it an engagement ring. Honestly, he just wanted to socialize a bit. It's not a pick-up at all. He don't even know how to do that. He haven't practiced in about 20 ans. That made her log. And he joined her. He poured her in himself a beer and we chatted nicely for about an hour. Her name was Adele. And she was in town from California for a week to visit her sister and brother-in-law with their new baby. Et son adorable baby, but oh my god, écrit so much. I've been staying with them for 5 jours now and he just needed to get away for a couple hours and be with the adult. He was enjoying Adele's company and she seemed to enjoy chatting with me well. We kept the conversation light and casual. She mentioned that she had gotten divorced about 3 ans ago. He didn't talk about my marital status. To my surprise, we spent most of our time chatting about baseball. She was a lifelong Angels fan. When she said she had to go back to her sister's house, we parted with a handshake and a big smile and he went back to Mike and Tommy, who had finished their game of darts and were now starting to tell me about what a pick-up artist he was. He remarked with a smile that he couldn't be that good since he was sitting at the same table with them again. I drove home that evening, he thought about Adele and of course Claire. He enjoyed being in the company of an attractive woman, but she wasn't my wife. It was fun to talk to a new person. Learn new things about them and hear their stories for the first time, but it didn't have that warm coziness you feel when you spend time with someone you love and trust. Trusted? Yes, he remembered trusting Claire. But will he ever be able to trust her again? He probably could, actually. I mean, it was easy to believe that she had learned her lesson and would never deceive me again. But that didn't mean the feeling of suspicion and betrayal would go away. He had a feeling he would be dealing with them for a long time to come. That night at the bar and the hour he spent talking to Adele began to break the log jam in my mind. Instead of just drifting along, dwelling on my situation and making no progress, he began to feel like he was thinking about it more actively. Each day, the pro and con of my two alternatives became clearer and clearer. It was as if he understood how each option would affect my future. It took about 2 more weeks before he was ready to talk to Claire. He left her a phone message, asking if we could talk at her apartment. A couple hours later, she left me a return message, offering to come over the next evening around 8 hours. When she opened the door in response to my knock, he could see that she had worked on her appearance. She was wearing pants and a sweater, nothing fancy, but she looked amazing. Her hair and makeup were perfect, and her clothes really suited her. He remembered what a beautiful wife he had. Danny, she said, tentatively leaning forward to kiss my cheek. She led me into her small living room where we sat down and she poured us each a cup of coffee. He watched as she poured a teaspoon of sugar and plenty of milk in my half, as she had done for years. When we sat down with our coffee, she looked at me and said, "It's good to see you." I knew she was scared and it would be cruel to procrastinate. "Claire, I've been doing a lot of thinking and I'm sorry, you probably knew about this. I'm going to file for divorce." Her eyes began to fill with blood, but all she said was, "Oh, Danny, you only have two choices in this situation and they're both disgusting. I don't want to be alone and wonder if I'll ever meet a man I can spend the rest of my life with. I still love you and I know you love me. On the other hand, it's been over 4 months and I still don't want you to come home. Every time I try to imagine it, I see that it won't work. No matter how loving and considerate you are to me, I can't get over what you did and how I felt because of it. I'm not angry I used to be, but I still don't want to be around you, let alone live with you or sleep with you. When I think about it, it's clear that it's not going to work out for me. I know you've put in a lot of effort, Claire. I know you went to counseling and everything and really tried to understand why you did it. I give you credit for that. But there are some things that are too serious to forget and I finally realized that what you did was too serious for me to get over it." He felt silent. He hadn't looked at anything while he was talking, but now he looked at Claire. She was looking at me and crying quietly, her shoulders shaking. He walked over and sat next to her on the cushion. She hugged me tightly, sobbing. He hugged her for a few minutes and then gently released himself from her embrace. "I'm sorry, Claire," he said very quietly. Then he moved to the apartment door, opened it and stepped out.